We're going to take a look at the requirements of issuing an official vehicle title certificate and what the reasons are for having these requirements. The most important thing to recognize is a vehicle title is a legal government document. Here's an example of a legal title right here. This is a title certificate for a motor vehicle. It's not something that's a casual document you can print on a laser printer. You can't buy one from a company. You can't download one from the internet. It is a legal document like a driver's license, a birth certificate, a passport, issued only by a government agency. And because it represents not only the existence of a motor vehicle, but the legal titled ownership, it's very serious how the government requires documentation in order to obtain a title, because once you have that title in your hands with your name on it, you own the vehicle. So if they're going to give you a title and declare you to be the owner, they want to make sure that that ownership is legitimate. So this motor vehicle titling manual is issued by the government agency. This one happens to be from the state of Missouri. Now, even though there's 50 different states and there's 50 different titling agencies, usually they're called the Department of Motor Vehicles or the Department of Transportation in some states. The requirements and the procedures are essentially the same from one state to the other. And the reason why is the origin of the requirements for titling comes from legal doctrine and also federal law. So there's going to be a lot of similarity from one state to another. So by understanding the requirements as described in this title manual, you'll be able to understand how it'll work in almost every state. So let's take a look at some of the basics of a title for a motor vehicle. First of all, it'll tell you top 10 reasons why applications are rejected. This is important to look at because everybody has horror stories about dealing with the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. We all think of DMV kind of like a cliche or kind of a punchline to a joke. A lot of TV shows and movies talk about how the DMV is so difficult to deal with. And the reason why is because they're not allowed to make exceptions. Unlike a private business, if you walked into a cell phone store or Best Buy and they wanted to let you slide because you didn't have certain information or they wanted to make an exception, they're allowed to do that because they're a private company. The government agency has to abide by the statutes of the state. So many applications are rejected. And here's why. Some of them are very simple. Complete name and address, no big deal. Notarized lien release. We'll talk about lien releases a little bit later in this course. A lien release is something that clears the ownership of a vehicle from a bank or from a loan, and it's important how that's done. Title application has to be signed. Well, sometimes people forget to sign it. Here is a kicker right here, number 4. The original MSO or assigned title was not submitted. When you apply for a new title, one of the keys is that you have the old title from the last owner signed over to you. If you don't have the last owner, you can apply for a title all you want, but they're not going to give it to you unless you jump through some other hoops, and we'll talk about exceptions to this. But the most important thing is you have to have the prior title assigned. You see that word assigned? That means the last owner says, yes, it's okay to give this vehicle to somebody else. Just because you have the vehicle and the keys and the VIN number, you don't legally have ownership until the DMV puts their blessing on it and gives you one of these. The last owner has to assign that and say it's okay. One of the other things that sometimes comes up is the application legible? We recommend typing it. We always type ours. If you handwrite an application, they might not be able to read it, especially with VIN numbers where an I and a 1 and a capital L all look the same. Fees are important. Timelines. Title penalties. If you don't apply for a new title within 30 days of when you purchase the vehicle, you're going to get a penalty, $25. Remind customers that a properly assigned ownership document must be obtained from the seller. It's so important they say it twice. Assigned title, assigned document. It's the same thing. They remind you twice to make sure you have that. Make sure that the assignment has signatures of owners and all the other details. And then it talks about bill of sale. And we'll get into bill of sale transfers momentarily. So they start out right away. This is on the second page. Reasons why applications are rejected. It's so common that they have a top 10 list. It's like David Letterman. Please be sure to complete all items on the application. They want to have you avoid, they're trying to help you avoid problems. They talk about the fees. Most states, the fees are pretty reasonable. In this state, it's $8. Some states are $5, $10, $15. It's not usually that much. Title penalties, they talk again about 31st day, $25 penalty, and $25 a month after that. Request for records. Let's talk about this briefly before we get into title. If you want to get information about a title that's not yours, about a vehicle that you purchased that's not in your name yet, and you want to get history of the vehicle or background on the vehicle, you can apply to get personal information in Department Records. What is personal information? Well, believe it or not, the name and owner of a vehicle is personal information. They don't just give it out to anybody. Personal information includes name, address, driver's license, motor vehicle sales tax number. If you want to get that information, you have to access the information if they are exempt under the federal DPPA. Remember, we talked about federal laws. Federal laws govern these procedures. So if you qualify under federal DPPA, then you can get this information from the government. The law also prohibits states from releasing information for bulk distribution. So you can't use it for marketing. If you have a legitimate reason to get the information, you can do that. And here's how you do it. You have to fill out this form. You have to send it to this address. Not important for this particular subject of titles, but keep in mind, if you do want to get information, it's not simple as just asking. Here you go. Transfer of a motor vehicle ownership. Sale and transfer. You have to have the assignment certificate. Title assignment date must be after the title issue date. That's kind of logical. You can't take ownership of a vehicle before the title was issued. You have to have the old title transferred first. Obtaining a title in a dealership's name when a customer loses the title. So if you purchase a vehicle from a dealership and they give you the title and then you lose it before you put it in your name, the dealership and only the dealership can apply for a duplicate. You won't be able to do that because it's not in your name yet. They're going to have to do a lot of things. An application, a photocopy, notarized affidavit. They're going to have to do a bunch of stuff. Here's the form they have to sign. They have to check off an affidavit. The motor vehicle described has not been operated. I'm giving the unit described. They have to sign it, put the VIN number, and they have to notarize it. So they take it pretty seriously. Even if the dealer is getting a title, they have to do a lot of bureaucratic jumping through hoops to do that. Issuance of a new motor vehicle. Look at, they even spelled vehicle wrong. New motor vehicle title. The face of the motor vehicle title contains the same information as a previous with the exception of the lien release area. This area has been removed. We're talking about lien releases. It used to be that the lien holder could just sign the title and clear the lien. Now it has to be on a separate form. Duplicate titles. This is probably the most common question that comes up from clients. The question is, I just want to get a duplicate. Well, unless your name is in the title records, you can't get a duplicate. Now, if it's your vehicle, it's already in your name, no problem. You can apply for a duplicate. But if that vehicle was last titled in somebody else's name or a dealership, you have to have them apply for a duplicate. Because what are you going to need? You're going to need a completed, signed, and notarized application for title. And the notarization has to be matching the name in the title records. If an insurance company applies for a title on behalf of the owner, they might be able to use the power of attorney. But they can only do that if they say it's a total loss. So if the insurance company applies for a duplicate, it's going to put a flag on that VIN number that now it's a salvage title. If a lien was recorded on the original document, the duplicate title will be mailed to the owner unless the lien holder says, send it to us. After July 2003, for your safety, all duplicate titles will be mailed to the owner named on the original certificate of title. The reason they do that is because they don't want somebody else trying to get a hold of your title, because whoever has this in their name owns the vehicle. So if you own a vehicle, you like this protection, although it's going to be difficult and annoying if you move and then you lose your title. Let's talk about liens. Odometer information, that's a federal requirement to make sure they track the mileage on every vehicle. Let's scroll down and talk about liens. And then we'll come back to the title application. A lien on a title is a hold, a red flag on a title, so that if you borrow money from a bank or from a title lender or from a dealership to buy a vehicle, that lender is allowed to hold your ownership to ensure that you pay them back. So if you buy a new vehicle and you finance it with, let's say, Ford Motor Credit, Ford Motor Credit is going to record a lien on the title, and in most cases, they're going to hold it. You're not going to get this document. It's going to be in their file cabinet. A lien is a claim on the property as security for payment of debt. That makes it so that you can't just sell the vehicle and stop paying the loan because now you don't own it. Filing a first lien requires they have to sign a form. Here's the kicker. Releasing a lien is also tricky. On a motor vehicle, a lien release after 2003 may no longer be released on the face. It used to be there was a space on the title where they could just sign off. Now, a notice of release on a certain form, 4809, must be completed, signed, and notarized. So this means that if you have a loan from Ford Motor Credit and you want it released, they have to sign this form and have it notarized because they want to make sure that the lien holder is being protected. Can't do it verbally, can't do it just with somebody's signature on the back of an envelope. Let's talk about how application for titles are done. First of all, in this state, most states have this, no registration shall be issued unless the applicant has applied for a title. There's a few exceptions to that. So title comes first, then you do registration. The Director of Revenue, that's who issues titles in this state, shall use reasonable diligence in ascertaining whether the applications are proper. They want to make sure that nobody's trying to steal your title. The certificate of ownership shall be manufactured in a manner to prohibit, as nearly as possible, the ability to alter, counterfeit, duplicate, or forge the certificate without detection. This is what we talked about before. It's not printed on just laser printer, blank paper. It's on a very specific certificate with watermark, scroll work. There's all kinds of little coloring in the background as security, just like money, to make sure you can't just white it out and put another name on it. Scratch it out, put another VIN number. It's very highly protected. In fact, it's protected and monitored in the same way that currency is, so that if a location for a Department of Motor Vehicles does not have sufficient security equipment, like a vault or a safe, like a bank, they don't allow them to have blank titles in stock. Some small little strip mall or branch locations for the government Department of Motor Vehicles, since they don't have a good security environment for blank titles, they're not allowed to keep them. They have to do it by mail. You can bring your application in, but they won't be able to hand it to you over the counter. They're going to have to mail it to you later from the main office. It's unlawful for any person to operate a motor vehicle unless there's a title. Some out-of-state vehicles have to be inspected. This is very common. Any time a new vehicle comes into a state from elsewhere, doesn't have to be brand new, used, but I mean new to that state, most states want to inspect it the first time just to make sure that the vehicle is good to go. Especially if it's reconstructed, specially constructed, kit car, non-USA, they want to check that car out. On the title application, there's a lot of spaces. We're not going to go through all of them, but here's an example of their application. And they go through what all these numbers mean. There's over 100 different blanks on this form to fill in. Fortunately, they give you good instructions, and most of it's pretty straightforward. But here's the most important thing. This is not like just filling out a request form at the pizza shop to check off you want a pepperoni pizza. This is an official form. They don't make it easy because they don't really care if it's easy. It's a government agency. And as you can remember from the first page, where they tell you the reasons why that applications are rejected, that a properly assigned ownership document and incomplete or incorrect but were returned. They want all these things filled in. You can't leave stuff blank, and it has to be legible. In this state, there's over 100 different spaces on that form. 101 to be exact. Everything has to be filled in. Or if it's not applicable, you put not applicable. Title applications are more complicated than you might think by design. Because again, they're issuing an official government document. It's not like you're just getting, a copy of a piece of paper or a coupon from somewhere. This is an official government document. Now, if you notice these black bars on the top, you might think, well, what are those for? Is that just a decoration? No. This allows for this form to be processed electronically. When this comes into their office, first it's going to go into a machine that's going to see these bars and know where these bars are on the page and know that all these other blanks are in a certain position related to the bars. For example, section 1 is 1 inch to the right. Section 3 is 1.5 inches to the right, and so on. If you have typed your document and didn't handwrite it, and if it's not folded up or crinkled or otherwise damaged, if it's in good shape and typed, your application can be processed much faster because the computer can see these bars, knows where everything is, can read all these entries that you made, and automatically import the data to their system and then print you out a title. So anytime you see a government form with these bars on it or any other type of markings, know that that is an indication for you to type it if possible and follow the steps to make sure it's correct. Because if it's correct and it's typed, you'll get it back fast. One of the biggest complaints people have about government agencies is it takes too long to get results. My title took me 3 weeks. Well, if you typed it and made it neat, you might get it back in 3 days. So use this knowledge to your advantage. Make sure you have all your details. Most importantly, understand that what they're giving you a legal ownership of a valuable asset. They don't take it lightly. So if you look at it that way, you won't get frustrated with them because you think they're making your life miserable or they're making it too hard for you. It's hard for a reason because they want to protect your title in the same way they protected the last owner. When you apply for a new title, really what you're doing is you're telling the government, take this asset, this motor vehicle, and rip it out of the hands of the other person and give it to me. See, you know you gave the person money. You know they gave you the keys. You know that they gave you the vehicle. The DMV doesn't know all that. They're not going to take your word for it. This process, this form, and the old title is what convinces them to take the ownership name away from the last person and give it over to you. So make sure you understand that and do the process with some diligence, because that way you won't run into trouble where you have to read back to the first page and start to understand why my application was rejected. They tell you right here, they don't want to reject your application. They want to make it easy, and they give you all the clues. So if you follow the steps, even though they might be a little bit annoying, you'll get your title, and that same difficulty will make it impossible for somebody else to improperly take the title away from you, because these steps are designed to protect your interest and to secure your ownership.